Welcome to Ability Assistance. My name is Phyllis Jones, Chair of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
And my name is Stacy Leibowitz, Secretary of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
This month's guest is Christina Gravina. She is the co-founder, CEO, and president of BILT New England. Welcome, Christina.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start out. What is BILT, B-I-L-T? What does that stand for?
Sure, so BILT stands for Bridging Independent Living Together. We're a nonprofit that works throughout Massachusetts, and we work in people's homes and in community-based settings mostly.
Okay, now you say throughout Massachusetts. If I remember correctly, you're talking Essex, Middlesex, Suffolk, and Norfolk. So basically inside the 495 belt?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
We may expand in the future, but right now those are our main areas of service.
How long have you been around?
We've been around since 2019, so just over 2 years.
And what, you're founder or co-founder and president and CEO. How did this come about?
So this came about after years of working throughout various companies and wanting to do something where I could make the services a little bit more person-centered and flexible for the needs of the family. Oftentimes when you work in large groups of people, you maybe aren't able to work on skills like you can with a one-to-one setting. We also do peer groups, but we have a very high staff ratio, so then that way everyone can really get the support that they need during the peer groups.
And what ages do you serve?
So we start at age 4, and then we work with people all the way through adulthood, including seniors.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really great. And how are you funded? What does that look like as far as being able to provide support?
So we have a variety of funding sources. We get funding through DDS. We are in the process of getting funding through insurance, through behavioral support funding. School districts, we do a lot of homeschooling with individuals, and once people turn over 22, again, we have self-directed funds that can be paid towards us, and then private pay as well.
That's great.
Now, you say ages 4 through senior citizens. So that could be beneficial to a young family with a young child, or irregardless of how old the family is, you're taking care of mom or dad.
Yes.
When the time comes. Just to put it out there for people who might be concerned because of all the regulations regarding COVID, can you explain a little bit about your staff, what sort of processes they go through before you bring them on? Any restrictions you might have in place to help people feel more at ease?
Sure, yeah. So the employees right now, they're all vaccinated against COVID. We are working in people's house, but we give them supplies to make sure that they have everything that they need. So they get bags with masks and hand soap and paper towels, so kind of just giving them their own supplies for when they go into the house, so they don't have to use the families, or if they're not there, they'll have their own. In terms of onboarding people, they go through usually 2 interviews, one with somebody else and one with myself, and then from there they have to go through a series of trainings, so CPR, first aid, positive behavioral supports, then they get continuous training, so de-escalation training, restraint training if needed. They'll get individual specific, so if someone has something like a seizure disorder or a G-tube, they'll get those. We also do CORI checks on them, driving record checks to make sure that that's all set, because we do have individuals that go into personal vehicles, and then they get ongoing supervision through me. I'm a big believer in continuing education and continuing training, so I'm always offering more trainings for people and offering discussions amongst employees about really important topics that are coming up. I'm also a sexuality educator for individuals with developmental disabilities, so this is one where I feel it's really important for a lot of people to get this training, so most of them have this as well.
I think that's a very interesting point that you bring up about sexuality training, because I think that can be kind of a minefield for some of the parents.
Yes.
So obviously dealing with somebody who has a disability, it's enough when you're a parent and you're dealing just with a child who may not have these disabilities. How do you work with the parents? Because obviously there's one thing when it comes to training and training your staff to work with an individual and discussing sexuality with them. How do you approach that and work with the parents, because many times they may not be enlightened or they may be stuck and concerned. So how do you address that?
So that's definitely what I encounter a lot. Obviously, no parent wants to think of their child as being a sexual being, but it is the reality of the situation. So what I explain to parents is that knowledge is so important, because if I don't know the names for my certain body parts, I might not know that these body parts shouldn't be touched by other people, or what an inappropriate touch is. So for a lot of individuals, I'm not going in there and talking about making babies. We're talking about consents, boundaries, what's an appropriate touch, what's not an appropriate touch.
Safety, basically, for that person.
In safety. And so many times when I talk to parents about that these conversations are very important, especially as people enter adulthood and they're going to be out in the real world, a lot of parents will then say they do see why this is an important conversation to have.
Now, just to back up a little bit further to when we were talking about what you do for your employees. For people who may not know, what's a query check?
Oh, so that's a background check where it goes through the state and federal database to just make sure that nobody has any criminal charges on their record. So that has to be done once a year, just to make sure everyone's doing well.
Not everybody knows what a query is, so I think we need to let people know that. And then you have, for lack of a better term, an exhaustive list, extensive list of types of trainings that you put your people through, which I think is fantastic. How do you do all that?
I'm really lucky because I'm the trainer of all these things. So, because I've been in the field myself for so long, I've just become trainers in all these sort of trainings to be able to provide to other people. And then as we grow, my hope is to get more employees involved in doing training, so then that way we can expand and train more people.
So to add to the training area, because again, you were talking about the query checks, and not everybody knows what that may be. PBS, positive behavioral supports. I'm personally very familiar with it, but not everybody knows what PBS training or those supports. What does that mean, and what does it mean in terms of de-escalation training? What does that look like when training your staff and also working with individuals?
Sure, yeah. So PBS, it's it's the acronym for Positive Behavioral Supports, and this is a training curriculum that really endorses setting up the environment successfully for individuals, and really working with ABA principles, loose ABA principles, things like...
What is ABA?
ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis.
It's always the acronym.
Yes, because as an attorney, that could be the American Bar Association.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
I know what it is, but again, for our audience.
So Applied Behavior Analysis, I'm an assistant BCBA, board certified behavior analysis. So what that means is that ABA is basically a field of study that's been scientifically validated to help change behaviors. We do very kind of naturalistic teaching with individuals, which means we let the child always lead us to what they're interested in. We're not doing kind of match to sample procedures, and positive behavioral supports is just an offset of that, where we'll do a lot of trainings about what does setting up an environment for success look like, showing up on time, giving people notice what's going to happen that day, making sure that you're praising people for when they do things great. If they do something not so great, you're not acknowledging it because it's not really that important. So really about how to have staff have self-management skills to work with people effectively. Our de-escalation class, it's 2 days. It's a very widely known class. And what we do for there is the priority of the class is to teach people how to make environments, again, successful, but to avoid crisis behaviors. So the bulk of the classes, we're not telling people run in there and put hands on people. It's the main priority is let's do as much as we can so that we never have to get to that point where we get to crisis situations.
Which, as a parent with a child with both physical, neurological epilepsy and psychological epilepsy. Stacy herself could tell you the horror stories I've had to deal with it. To not have to put hands on somebody who's already in a crisis mode is significant.
Yeah.
Both for the person who's there to support the individual, as well as the individual who's dealing with the situation.
Definitely.
Right. I mean, basically, it's a way of redirecting behavior and hopefully reinforcing that redirection, but also tracking what happens when there is a behavior, like what is the antecedent to that behavior, and then the aftermath, and what was that antecedent and how do you address it, which I think it's a different way of thinking from years past. So I think it's very important because, again, you don't want to put hands on somebody if you don't need to, but how can you work with them so it changes the mindset. So it's huge. And the younger I think you're able to get to somebody, I would imagine the positive behavioral supports are used even under age 22, right? For individuals.
For all of them, because that really is the main point, is making sure that people are well prepared, and if staff feel supported and they feel like they know what to do and they've been trained. And part of the training as well talks about teaching people skills. So we're teaching functional communication. We're teaching people, hey, it's okay if you say you need a break. You don't need to maybe like run out of the room, just say you need a break. So then that way also, along with the staff, then staff start to feel like, okay, like this is great that we're teaching people as well as we're making sure that everyone remains calm and that we're getting, some fun stuff done today.
No, fun stuff, that's a big
I like
deal,
that.
especially right now. So your clientele, physical, intellectual, and mental disabilities?
Yes.
Okay, so you run the whole gamut. You don't just piggyback on one particular type of disability.
No, so we serve all ranges. Sometimes if people have severe behavioral issues, we may not be able to support them. Just if there's, need extensive staffing needs, or if there is a serious risk of physical harm to the staff, that's something I have to consider. But in general, we serve all sorts of people with abilities and disabilities, and what we do is that everyone has their own program. So obviously a 5-year-old is going to have a much different program than someone in their 50s that has mental health issues that lives alone. So we really cater the program, and that's part of why I made the company, was to really do flexible services, because if somebody only needs maybe 2 hours a week to go out to the bank and get their stuff done and have a little socialization, that's all they need is the 2 hours. Whereas maybe a 5-year-old needs more intensive supports where we're in there 40 hours a week teaching them skills and really making sure that they're learning the things they need to learn.
Now, what about ASL? Do any of your people, or are any of your people fluent in ASL? If you have somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing and needs ASL services, or do you have people who speak languages other than just English?
Yep. So we do have bilingual staff that speak Spanish, which is great. We do serve some Spanish-speaking families right now. For ASL, I know a little bit of ASL, but we don't have someone that's totally fluent in that right now. We do have a lot of people that are fluent with the touch chat and the kind of iPad talkers, and that's a big thing that we've been working with a lot of individuals.
That's great.
No, that's fantastic. So let's pretend. I come to you, my child's in the 8th grade, he's on an IEP, he's got both neurological and mental disabilities, and I say, I could use services, but I don't know what. You've come into my home, what are you going to do?
So what I do is I do an intake first, where I talk with families to see what should we do for services, because it's very important that the family's wishes and their goals are incorporated into the program so that it can carry over when the staff leaves. So oftentimes I ask families, what is it that you think is the most important thing that we should be working on? And then we go from there to try to do our best to incorporate it. Typically, if we're doing something like learning skills, I'll do something like incorporate exercise supplies, learning that skill, and then doing something fun like going to get a coffee, because obviously nobody wants a drill sergeant in their house kind of telling them what to do. So we always have to kind of teach skills, or any of our programs we have, it's all done with a way that's like a fun, happy, upbeat way and never at the expense of causing more issues when we leave.
Right, of course.
Do you review, for example, IEPs or neuropsych exams?
Oh yeah, that's all part of the intake process. So when people get started, I send them an intake form, and then depending on their profile, I always get an IEP or a homeschool program. But if they also have some medical stuff going on, I might ask for a recent physical or neuropsych eval, just so that I can make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what the individual needs.
And do you ever request HIPAA releases?
So the families are the ones that send it to me directly. I don't typically talk to the doctors, but if I do, I have information releases to allow that to occur.
That makes sense. And I guess to add to that, I mean, obviously you're meeting with them, you're getting them initiated. What does that pay structure, are they paying, or since you've gotten funding from DDS and other entities, what does that look like with the family? Are you applying then, or sharing information on the individual with, say, DDS, for example, or one of the other funding entities to be able to get funding for that person specifically? What does that look like in terms of the family?
So often I have DDS providers reaching out to me and
with, like,
introducing
referrals.
me to families that they have. But I do a significant amount of work with families who don't have funding. Usually it's pro bono, honestly, to help them get some funding that they need to get. So like even yesterday I met a family that really needs help, so I'm going to go over there next week for a couple hours and just show her where to get the form, show her how to fill out the forms, who needs to get the forms. Because part of having this nonprofit is that I feel that there's a big lack of people understanding what they can get.
Yes. I agree with that.
And how to get it. It's almost like they get the kind of like the trail of breadcrumbs. They know that there's something out there, but they don't know how to get it. And most of it is just filling out the forms and knowing who to get the forms and making sure that you can prove why you have this need. So I spend a lot of time with families doing that.
So that brings up an interesting point for me, as far as, because I work in the turning 22 plus world, right? And you're dealing with 4 plus through the life stream, which I think is amazing, because hopefully there can be some consistency for an individual. But what does that look like if you're working with somebody who's now 21 going to turn 22? Are you also working with the family on transition planning and what that may look like? Because I think that that's a real challenge for a lot of families. They kind of come in blind.
Especially
it's like
today.
falling off a cliff, right? And not really knowing. They think that they're still going to get the same services. And the reality is that the adult world, in each state, it's not different, but maybe the age is different. Some states are 21, some are 22. Massachusetts is 22. It's different. All of the services are different, and you have to reapply for different things and see if you even qualify. What is your role in that if you're working with a family already?
So if a family wants my help, I'll always be happy to attend transitional meetings to help them look at programs. A lot of times what I'll do is the families might even ask me to come look at day programs or residential programs with them and see if I think that it would be a good fit for their loved one. And I'm happy to always do that with people. Even when people transition into adult services, we have some people where they're living in group homes, but we still go and take them out a couple times a week, just because we can provide the more special, one-to-one outing than maybe a group setting can provide. And then for the families, they feel really comfortable that they have kind of an extra set of eyes in there. And usually group home staff, they love when we show up, because they're like, oh good, thank you, you know so much about this person.
Right. You're informing them. So and I think that's what's really nice too, is that there's a collaboration then. Because obviously right now we're dealing with staffing crisis in this field, and in all fields really, for the most part.
Yes.
But it's really significant when you're working with people who have disabilities across the lifespan. So having the service, I'm sure, is essential. But also there's a learning experience between the staff of your nonprofit and obviously the residential staff. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
I also was noticing when I was looking on your website, you recently took a bunch of folks to the Topsfield Fair.
That's awesome.
We went to the Ecotarium, the Topsfield Fair. We had a stand there for the weekend, but yeah, we went to the Ecotarium. So we do peer groups with individuals that are somewhat around the same age. So we have like a bowling league on Thursday nights for the fall for people that are 17 to like 24 range, and it's really cool because after school they get to go have pizza, bowling, salads, hang out with their friends, and this month we're doing Canopy Lake Park trips. So it's really fun. And so based on the need, we either have parents drop off and pick up, or it might be an individual's one-to-one outing if they need that level of support to come.
And I think that that's the biggest thing. I mean, we've all during the height of COVID suffered through that that I need to be with somebody else, friends type of a situation. But when then you add on this extra layer to be able to be with people my own age, to be able to just be myself and not have somebody looking at me differently, for lack of a better term. I think that in and of itself is huge. So, kudos on that one.
Thanks.
That also, and I think it's extremely important because inclusivity is such a big component of what we all try to do. How does that work with the individuals when you're trying to match people up in peer groups? Are you working with the individuals to get their take on what they would like to do as well? And how does that kind of flow as far as, I'm interested in this event or that event, and then putting those pieces together?
So I have some individuals that call me with great ideas, and they'll actually say, hey, Christina, I think that our next social group should be this, or, in the summer we went to the duck tour, and one individual literally told me, we need to go to California Pizza Kitchen. I already called. They will make a reservation, and we need to go to do the duck tours after. And I was like, okay, that's great. So I will kind of throw things out there, but a lot of times they come up with things. And then our conversations while we're there, the whole point of the peer groups is to kind of, have people talk with each other, have them try to ask questions. But some of our conversations are also a little bit unorthodox. Like last outing we had, we talked about fire alarms, for a half hour, and about how they're too loud and people don't like them. And it was a group consensus that fire alarms are very loud and disruptive, but we need them for safety purposes. So we talk about a lot of important things while we're on our outings.
That's really great. So that's also an educational opportunity.
Yes.
And a life skill opportunity.
And a life skill opportunity. And speaking of which, I think that's a good segue into employment, which is, I think that's something that you guys are involved with as well. Give us a little bit of a background on how that works with your nonprofit.
So we help individuals apply for jobs, find jobs, and keep the jobs. And if they, yes, and if they don't have a job, or maybe they're not ready for a job, then we start with volunteer opportunities. Part of what we do too is we have a whole curriculum where we do modified CPR first aid, so people can get certified and also have something to build their resume with. And we also will help people if they're in food services or at the grocery store, whatever it is. I'll actually make social stories a lot of times, or visual aids, because some things are very abstract that maybe neurotypical people won't understand. Like, for example, how much do you fill a bag? Because you don't know how much it can hold, So I've actually made social stories of the correct ratio of things and what should be in what bags, which is really helpful for the individuals because they'll study the stories really, and then they really
Or if
improve.
you do like an image board maybe, because some people are more visual than others.
Yeah, exactly. So we really make sure that we set up the environment for them, again, for success before they even get to work, where maybe for some people we start and we have a timer where every half hour they have their movement break and they go do a quick lap around the store. For other people it might look at, we go with them the first 2 or 3 times until they're really doing great, and then we fade away and we might come back and check in a month, and then we always tell the employers, please don't feel stressed out. That we're here to help, so call us if you see anything, or if you're going to teach them a new job, or if you have any issues, please reach out to us as a company and not the family. You can of course tell them, but families tend to get very stressed out by this. So it's like, it's usually simple things like just miscommunications that we can all help with.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's, you want them to be independent and to have what are known as natural supports, right? Where the employer is kind of helping them, but if there is a new skill that they're challenged by, that's where you can come back in and help, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's really the biggest thing, is that a lot of times companies, they might feel that if they hire someone that has a disability, they're going to need to invest a lot of time in training them. So I always contact them before we even start to say, hey,
That's
look,
right.
this is great for you guys, and let me explain why.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we're going to be training, we'll sit through orientation with them, we'll help them understand the policies, and then we're basically like the lifeline. If anything happens or if you need support, we'll come back in and help as much as we need to.
Right.
No, that is fantastic, because as a parent with somebody who's, a child who's disabled, the biggest problem or concern that I think most parents have for younger people is, what happens to my child when I can't do it for them anymore?
Yeah.
So you want that child to have as much of an independent life as humanly possible, whether it be working or going to school or getting training or the like. Have you ever partnered with maybe any of the tech programs, any of the technical schools after hours?
I
or-
haven't, but that's something I was thinking about looking into, because I think definitely some adult, education, continuing education classes for the individuals would be great. We have done some things like cooking classes, which have been really great, and we do a lot of one-to-one with life skills, so even learning about safety in the home and who do you call if there's an emergency, what constitutes an emergency, kind of that sort of thing. But definitely I've thought about the technical schools, because they have so many options of different things that the individuals could learn there. That would be great.
Or even community colleges for people who might have a little bit more of an ability, but still need low-level education in order to build upon and then step up to give them
Yeah.
a little bit more.
And we do help actually kids that are in college. We have a growing division of individuals that are very capable of doing the college work, but they might need help with, keeping on track with laundry or with their college work. Maybe they need it broken down in a certain way, where we basically just help them understand the assignment. Maybe we highlight certain things, or maybe we just, make little indents of things, or tell them, oh, you forgot to cite this paragraph, make sure you cite. So just things where, anyone would have liked the support in college, including myself.
I was
but-
going to say,
That would have been nice.
But they really appreciate it, and the families really appreciate it, because again, this is a really scary thing. You have a kid with autism, they're now going into college. How are they going to fit in? And that's where we come in and say, sometimes your roommate, maybe they don't like if you're up playing video games till 3 a.m., maybe we need to be a little cognizant of that. So
Right,
just
it's the
kind
social
of,
awareness that may not be so natural
Yes.
for them. So
no, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, we've spent a lot of time on younger people. Now, let's say you have either an older sibling or you've got a parent who you're trying to assist, whether that person has a physical disability, they can't walk around mobility-wise anymore, they're not as able to, or even somebody who might be dealing with things like early onset Alzheimer's or dementia. They're still able to do things, but they're not able to do as much as they were prior to. How
Yeah.
do you work with those individuals?
So their programs are definitely very unique to the person. We have quite a few people that have acquired brain injuries too, and that they kind of fall in that same sort of category where they used to have, a relatively normal life, and now their whole life has changed. So it's really about meeting them where they're at and trying to help in any way. A lot of times with, adults, you really have to build the relationship before you can kind of start suggesting
Yes.
certain things.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, I have one individual who's in his 50s, he lives by himself. We started working with him by bringing him to the bar where the staff got a ginger ale and he'd get a drink, and it was a very natural way to kind of have a normal relationship. And now we're at the point where we're actually helping him, with these bigger life things, like figuring out how do you get a checkbook and how do you get direct deposit, and we need to fill out your Mass Health renewal form every year for health insurance so it doesn't get dropped. So it's really about trying to figure out what are the deficits that they personally have, and how can we help them in a way for whatever that deficit might be. For a physical disability, if someone's struggling with that, a lot of times it might be helping them with things in the house that they can't get to anymore, or maybe even sometimes people don't want to leave the house because they might be a little bit feeling embarrassed about how they look now, or it might be just such a hurdle to get out that door that we'll go take the shopping list and go to the store for them, so they don't have to worry about it, but they're also not relying on a service to do it that might not understand the particular products they need and why.
Gotcha.
Right.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I don't know. Stacy, you're kind of like the go-to person in this particular
For
area.
disabilities. I think, you bring up the interesting point about brain injury, which I think there's so many issues around that because, like you said, somebody had a different life before. And I remember very specifically working with somebody in a program years ago who remembered what life was like before and has really struggled. So what you say about developing relationships is really critical. How do you handle that with somebody, though, who may have some challenges around accepting or dealing with that change? Because somebody who maybe even dealing with dementia, because that can be, they might be aware at that point that this is happening and progressing, and it's different than somebody who's had maybe a lifetime of a disability. They remember the life before.
So this is something where we talk a lot about in training: empathy, understanding, respect, that understanding that this person, like you said, they didn't have a lifelong disability.
Right.
And of course they're going to be angry sometimes, and sometimes anger might come out in a way that doesn't really look very nice, but it still needs to be out. They need to get it out. So sometimes what this looks like for them is trying to make them feel important and getting them involved. So a lot of individuals, I'll say like, hey, look, you've had a brain injury now and you're thriving for 7 years. I'm working with this other person that's only had a brain injury for 6 months and they're really struggling.
Right.
I think it would be wonderful if you could be like a role model for them. And most people,
that's amazing. Yeah.
once I
Mentoring.
link people up, it's like really, it's so beneficial because both of them feel like, okay, I'm not alone and I kind of have somebody to help guide me. So I find that in general, no matter what the disability is, that people all want to feel important. They all want to feel like they have a job to do and that they matter, So as much as I can get them to, I have one guy that I actually got him involved in the local town politics because he used to be an attorney. So I told him, well, why don't you join the Chamber of Commerce? And you have more experience than anybody. You have a brain injury, but that doesn't mean that you don't know about regulations and policies. And so now he goes to the Chamber of Commerce in his town.
That's amazing.
And that's going to feel so fulfilling to be able to sit back and say, hey, I used to make X number of dollars at big law firm XYZ, in front of federal judges all the time. I've worked with those people. And, all of a sudden, unfortunately, they're no longer able to do those types of things. I mean, it just kind of drives into your gut,
But now they can find a different purpose.
Exactly.
Right? So I think doing that is huge. And even the mentoring piece that, wasn't something that was very much in the forefront, yes, having something else being part of the Chamber of Commerce, but being able to mentor somebody is huge too. So I think you're giving somebody a lot of hope by doing that.
Yeah, and
So
just
that's
giving
really
them a
amazing.
purpose, something to feel good about every day, that they know they have to show up. I also have started a human rights committee, my own human rights committee.
great.
So individuals that have a lot of opinions, I tell them, I love your opinions. Why don't you join the human rights committee so that you can hear other people's opinions and you can voice your opinions in a constructive way, and that way you have that, appropriate outlet to do so.
Do you get them involved at all in terms of voting or taking part in, if they have an opinion about whatever the issue is, either working on somebody's campaign or in terms of volunteering, obviously, or volunteering for a particular nonprofit associated with that particular opinion? Do you help them do that? Because that's also another way to be able to fit in with like-minded people.
Yeah, we do that a lot, and especially if they feel very strongly about something, like if they feel very strongly about like animals, I'm going to try to get them involved in an animal activist group. And the thing that I find is usually when people have to try something new, it's intimidating. So the first answer is usually no, but then how we work around that is, let's just drive by and look at it. Oh, is that a cute dog outside? Maybe we should go inside and just see it. And that's kind of how, same with and that's the entryway. Or same with, politics. Oh, people are going to be, holding picket signs here. Do you want to go? No. Okay, well, let's just drive by. Oh, look, there's an extra picket sign. Don't you know that guy? And then by that time, we're moving out of the car to go to help. And then people feel after like, wow, that's great. So we've done a lot of work in shelters. We've worked in a lot of homeless shelters, transitional shelters with serving food.
That's great.
Food pantries where we've actually made bags for the homeless to pick up of food. And then we work a lot with Cradles to Crayons in Newton, where we'll sort donations that come in their clothes or books, and then we make packets for kids to take. So the individuals love this, and it really makes them feel good that they're doing something to help somebody else.
And isn't that why we're all here, right?
Exactly.
So I know our time is kind of winding down, so I just want to ask, is there anything else, and obviously you've shared so much with us about what you do, and it's amazing, but is there anything else you want us to know about your organization?
No, just I'm the co-founder, and I really try hard to make this so that we serve all families and that we do a good job with it. And my second mission is to make sure all my employees are very happy and that they have training and that they feel that this can be a career, not just kind of a side job. So we're always hiring, we're always taking new families, and we're definitely, expanding and looking to do some great things in the future.
No, I think overall that's fantastic to know that you have somebody who you can go to regardless of whether or not it's your toddler, your sister, your brother, older, or maybe mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, that you have that whole gamut so that if I develop a relationship with you as a family, I know I can feel comfortable. You've done a good job with my toddler, or you've done a good job with my mother or father. Now that I have a toddler who might need assistance, there's that trust, there's that rapport, as opposed to some nonprofits might be just centered on specific ages. So the fact that you have that ability to do that rapport, I think that is personally fantastic. So thank you for coming on.
Sure,
you've given us a lot of information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was super fun. I really appreciate being here.
We feel the same way.
We feel the same way.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yes.
Very, very important.
Yes. On behalf of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance, thank you again, Christina, for joining us and introducing us to BILT, BILT New England, and the services offered and the communities you serve. You can learn more about BILT by visiting their website at www.bltene.org. We'll have it in the closing credits, don't worry. And on Facebook, Instagram, and or LinkedIn. And the call sign for that is BILTINC. Again, we'll have it on the closing credits. Don't worry about that too much. Join us next month as North Andover CAM's own Brian Frazier is going to be here to discuss their new affiliation with Exploring and the new communications program that they'll be running. In December, I'm personally really looking forward to this one. We'll be joined by North Andover's delegation to the State House. Both Representatives Christina Minicucci and Trom Nguyen, as well as State Senators Bruce Tarr and Diana DeZoglio, are all scheduled to appear to discuss legislation pending on Beacon Hill as it pertains to those who are considered disabled. As a reminder, North Andover CAM will release this episode on their YouTube page, on Roku, on Podbean, and you can also follow us on Facebook at Commission on Disability Issues, that's with an S, NAND. We also post the episodes there as well as a lot more interesting information. We are consistently looking for new topics to explore here at Ability Assistance. And if there are any specific topics that you'd like to learn more about, please email us at pjones, as in Phyllis Jones, at northandoverma.gov.
We would like to take a moment to thank all of our volunteer crew from the Greater Lawrence Technical School. And I hope I get the names right. Graphics, from the Graphics Communications Shop, we have Cassie Buono, Tyler Maloney. And from the IT Shop, we have Raylan Ula, Jacob Dinsmore, Alan Garcia, Victor Melancano, Isaiah Collin. I hope again that I've gotten your names right. If not, I apologize, but we do appreciate everything you've done to support the show today. So thank you very much.
And until next month, thank you all.